Two guys have entered my room with handguns and shotguns.
I'm trying to save my dying son.
But it was like that I was locked in a story that I couldn't rewrite.
This would not be my life forever.
There was a good chance I was not going to survive at all.
And that same evening, I shot him.
I said to her, I think I can forgive you.
I'm Zio Bookbinder, and this is Imagine Justice, where we tell true stories about what happens after harm is done. These stories often include gun violence, death, child abuse, and sexual assault. Please take care in listening. These stories are told by the people who lived them.
The judge had told me he wasn't going to give him life in prison without chance of parole. And I fought for life in prison without chance of parole. So I am the person that got Lester Polk life in prison without chance of parole, LWOP as they call it. I'm fighting to get him out.
Can you start by telling me who you are?
Who I am, that's a good question. My name is Cheryl Ward Kaiser. I have lived in Salinas, California. 75, almost 76 years. My birthday is in May. So I've lived here my whole life. My dad worked in produce. My whole life, everything around my life has been having to do with produce somewhere along the way. You can't live in Salinas and not somehow or other have to do with produce. Got married, had two daughters. There's even more of a story to that, but I have a son I placed for adoption before all that happened, and I went back and found him when he was 26. So I have three kids. And I was fortunate enough I didn't have to work since my husband was gone 6 months out of every year going to Yuma, Arizona. The good thing is I got to stay home and be with them and do what I needed to do with them since he was gone. So that was an important part of my life, was to make sure that I did right by them. And then June 14th, 1991, was home in bed. Him and I both. It was produce time, so he was back in town. And we heard a noise in the other part of our house and didn't know what it was. And next thing I know, two guys have entered my room with handguns and shotguns. They racked the shotgun, so we know the shotgun was loaded. Came in our bedroom, never even got out of bed. The guy with the handgun came around my husband's side, the shotgun on mine, pulled him out of bed, put him on the floor, put the handgun in his mouth, pulled me out of bed and put me face down, hands up, shotgun to my head. Now we have four guys in the house. Two go get my 17-year-old daughter, two stay with us. Yeah, nightmare. You can imagine everything running through your head. They take forever to bring her in the bedroom. When they finally do, they throw her on the floor and they kick her. They pick me up, hit me with a shotgun, tell me that they believe there's a safe and they believe there's money in the safe. We don't have a safe. My husband is a cooler manager. We don't own anything. We don't have a reason to have a safe, but they believe it. So they make my daughter stand on the bed and they make her strip her clothes off. They put the shotgun in her mouth and they tell me they're going to blow her effing head off, which you will picture. As a mother, you picture it. Wasn't enough. They eventually rape her with the barrel of that shotgun, making her father watch, telling her that if he doesn't tell where that safe's at, that the next step is we're going to rape your wife and your daughter and we're going to make you watch. He's already watched her rape with a shotgun. Anyway, he begins to stand up for the first time in 48 minutes. And as he does, the one that has the shotgun and whatever, he hits him in the back of the head and shotgun goes off on the bathroom floor. Struggle continues in the closet one-on-one with the guy that has him. And struggle continues into my closet and a muffled shot. And that hits the floor, and I know it's him. They come out of the closet. They say, get a hold of that F&B, me, and still bent on raping Roxy, and let's find that safe. 48 minutes, and we're still looking for a safe. And with that, a car comes on the road. The car, they all looked at the car and went, "Oh my God, there's a car on the road. Let's get out of here." And the last one to leave is the guy that had his foot on my back, and he says, "Don't move for 15 minutes." And I'm like, "Yeah, right." The moment he hits that hallway, I'm up and I'm going to that closet, and my husband's laying on the floor with his eyes open, and I try to feel for a heartbeat, and shit, I don't know how the hell you're supposed to do that anyway. I screamed at Roxy. I said, "Get in here, do CPR on your dad, because I don't know CPR." And she ran in, did CPR while I hit 911, and he breathed 3 breaths, and he died in her arms. And 8 minutes later, the sheriff's office was there. The sheriff's on my case, stayed up 27 hours, and I had all 5 of them in jail. And they were 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. And my entire life had been working with young people, had been working with youth. And the car on the road was a 16-year-old girl that drove their getaway car. And we had them all in jail in 27 hours. And then came the next nightmare of your life, going through court. And that might as well be the next nightmare of your life, because that's just not, I've never even served on jury, so I had no idea what the hell I was even going to be looking at. It was education of a lifetime, to say the least, and a frustration of a lifetime for me, because it was the reality is, because I was such a strong victim, they wanted to hold me out, and they did hold me out. The only time I was ever allowed in the courtroom was to testify. So I sat in the hallway or in the district attorney's office for 22 months, going nuts, not being able to know what the hell was going on. And I made sure that I got all the transcripts, all the whatever, so that I could read what was happening, in your lifetime. Here's your life, and you're not getting it. It was very frustrating. And so the reality came for me was to thank the people that had given me the voice in the courtroom. I finally, at the end, got to do a victim impact statement, and I never even knew what the crap that meant till I went through it all and was able to actually stand up in court and actually say what I wanted to say. I did the victim offender talk, and I walked the judge back and Lester back through his rape, and I had to talk like he talked, and I had to do all of that in court, which was really hard, because I had to get up and talk about the fact that my dad beat the shit out of me, and that I had been sexually molested by my grandfather, and that I'm sorry if I was not going to listen to excuses of why it should be okay for him to, because he had a bad life, that it's okay for him to have raped my daughter and for him to have done what he did. I wasn't going to listen to that. And I fought for life in prison without chance of parole. And the day that I did that, the judge got up and walked off, and he came back 4 days later with life in prison without chance of parole. So I am the person that got Lester Polk life in prison without chance of parole, LWOP as they call it. So I never saw him again.
It's hard to hear what I ask here because of the delay over the phone. I just asked Cheryl, how do you feel about that now?
I'm fighting to get him out. I want him out. I want Lester out.
The very same part of the court process that finally allowed Cheryl to have a voice was also where she convinced the judge to give Lester this sentence she's now fighting to undo, the victim impact statement.
It was so powerful, I wanted to thank the person that had written it. And it was shocking to me to find out the person that had written that wasn't a victim, that it was the head of the California Youth Authority and the head of corrections. He had been one of the few people that had ever been both, which his name was James Rowland. And he had written it for the state of California, which had ended up getting adopted in all 50 states. And the power of that was unbelievable for me. And I went over to Fresno to do a talk, and he was in Fresno. And they told me halfway through my talk that, guess what, James Rowland is sitting in your audience. And I was like, can I ever begin to tell you, sir, what that meant to me to be able to stand up in that courtroom and say what I wanted to say. And I didn't say, I want you dead and I hate you, and I didn't say that. I said, I don't hate you, and I forgive you. Mr. Rowland walked me out to my car and told me, he said, you said if there was anything I could ever do for you, he said, what I'm going to say to you is I want you to come to Fresno, and I want you to come to a conference, and I'm going to pay for your way, and I'm going to pay for you to stay in a motel, and the conference is on restorative justice. And I'm not going to tell you anything about it. I'm just going to tell you I'm going to pay your way. I said, okay, I'm coming.
How long after the court process was over did this happen?
Probably within the next 2 years.
Okay.
A lot has happened here. Cheryl meets James Rowland, who helped establish the use of the victim impact statement in the courtroom, and he asks her to attend this conference on restorative justice.
I went over and went to the conference, and the conference blew me away. And every time I walked out, I went, oh my God, this is what I fought to do. I fought to have a voice in the courtroom. I fought to have power. I fought to have my voice heard, not the state of California's voice heard. They owe me. They don't owe the state of California. They owe me. And I want to sit down and have a conversation with them. I want to ask them questions. And the system doesn't allow me to do any of that. And restorative justice allows you to do all of that.
Hello, Zoe.
Hello, Lester. So nice to meet you.
All right. It's an honor.
So it started with you writing letters of remorse, right?
Yes. Well, they were attempts at letters of remorse. Because at that time, I really didn't understand what remorse was. I was leaning towards remorse, but I couldn't. If you'd asked me to really describe it at that time, I really couldn't have described it to you. I just knew what you did was wrong, and you need to do something to try to make it right. But nothing that was anywhere close to healing.
And how old were you when you committed the crime?
Oh, I was 18. I graduated high school Wednesday, and I was arrested Friday.
And how much longer was it that you attempted this letter of remorse?
Oh, I'm going to say maybe 9 years.
Okay.
9 years into my sentence.
And you said it was about 7 years before you heard anything back.
Yeah, she didn't get back till 2007. We were on a lockdown like normal, and they just came by the door with mail, So, I didn't think much of it, so I grabbed the mail, put it in the locker, because I was in the middle of doing something else. Right. So I recognized the name. I said, Cheryl Ward. I said, my God, what in the world does she want, right? So I opened the letter, read it, and she acknowledged that she had received it, and at this time my heart is beating. It's beating like out of my chest. I'm so surprised. Adrenaline is going through me, and I'm scared. I want to know what she's talking about. Is she angry? I'm wondering, is she angry? Is she religious? Well, why is she writing me?
And can you just right now tell me, as if I don't know anything about the story, who is Cheryl Ward?
Oh, okay. Cheryl Ward was a survivor in a home invasion robbery I committed in 1991. And she, last time I seen her, we were adversaries in court. All right. She wanted me to have the death penalty, and I wanted to live. So we weren't seeing eye to eye. If I can speak tongue in cheek. But the next time I heard from her, she was, I'm not going to say she was consoling, but it was different. It was honest. It wasn't angry. It wasn't vitriol. It was just, this is just something we need to do.
let's go back to when I first wrote him. I wrote him probably 9 years into my husband's, about 1999. I decided that I can stand and tell an audience all day long, and I was already talking about what had happened to me. And I could tell the audience that I didn't hate them, but I needed to tell them I didn't hate them. How do you do that? Restorative justice. How do you do it? So I decided I was going to write them. So I started writing each and every one of them. And I will be honest with you, the hardest letter I had to write was to Lester, not to the one that killed my husband, which fascinated me. That was the hardest letter I had to write. And how do you begin that letter? Hi, guess who? I mean, it is really a trippy letter to write. And I wrote him, and immediately, I think he was the one that wrote me back first, as fast as he possibly could turn that around as he wrote me. And I've never thrown away one letter I have received from any of these guys.
So what did the letter say, the letter he wrote back to you so quickly?
Well, their whole thing was any of the rest of the guys that wrote me back was all about how many times can I write I'm sorry for what I've done? How in the world, who the heaven's name was that person that was in your room? I don't even know who that was. How could I have been so awful? And that's what I heard from the other three. Didn't hear that from the shooter, but I heard that from the other, to the point I had to finally say to them all, would you quit saying you're sorry and just tell me what you're doing in prison? Tell me what classes you're taking. Tell me how you're doing. That's all I care about knowing. I don't need to hear over and over again that you're sorry. And people say, well, they can fool you. I can tell the difference between the other ones telling me they were religious versus him telling me he was religious by how he talked and how he was. And I could hear that difference in him. But when I met him, oh my God, that was when I saw it.
See, I didn't know what type of person she was. I just knew she wanted to do this, right? I knew some good would come out of it, at least to the fact that I would be able to own up to it, even if she yelled and called me a murderer and never stormed out. I knew that I would have faced my demon and the havoc of my past head on, and that's what I wanted to do.
Mm. Wow.
It's always with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so then I'm talking to the person that I've wronged the worst. Her husband's not there. Her husband's not there. Her daughter's not the same. Her family's destroyed. She's talking to me. And now I have to figure out a way to talk without re-injuring. I think that's one of the best signs of change, when you don't want to hurt the person anymore. When it's not really about you, when it's about the other person. It was like a minefield I was walking through. I was like, well, you don't want to say that. You don't want to say this. Okay, you want to say stuff that only affirms.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Oh, shucks. Well, if you like me to call you some other time, I'll be more than willing to do it and answer any more questions.
Yes, please do. I'd love to pick up right here, right where we left off, and then get like a detailed account of the rest of it.
Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Hello?
Hello, Lester.
How are you, Zoe?
Okay, we're recording.
All right. So when I would reflect on the crime that I committed and the way that I impacted the Ward family's life, I'd always ask myself, why did I do that? It's not like I planned on doing that before I left the house. I didn't think about it. But after much reflection and insight and self-healing and empathic journeys, I realized it was tied to the fact that when I was 10 years old, I got raped.
Mm.
This is a hard thing for me to talk about, and I don't like talking about it in context of the actions that I did for fear that it would sound like I'm justifying.
Mhm.
Because I can't justify my actions. There's no justification. But I can get an understanding. And the understanding was that in that time, I felt like my whole life that I was living in that 5 minutes of pain that I experienced when I was a little boy. I never was able to escape that.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I was never able to escape that 5 minutes of helplessness and shame. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it was like that I was locked in a story that I couldn't rewrite.
Mm. Yeah.
And so after that, I went and I told my family what happened, and then they questioned me and asked me if I wanted it. They asked me if I fought back, and I told them, I was 10. The perpetrator was about 15 or so, and they basically put it to the fact that if I didn't fight him back, that must mean I wanted it, and that I must be homosexual or something along those lines. And so I began to question that myself. I began to wonder, is this why it happened? Is this why he picked me? Maybe he knew something I didn't know. So, I began, if I couldn't heal, I began to conceal. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So I began to become hyper-vigilant, super active in sports, toxic masculinity, extreme promiscuity, these things. If you could be the loudest, you can be the bawdiest, you can talk like this, people would never suspect that this would happen to you. So all the way late in my teen years, I would have this doubt hanging over my head that maybe for some reason I'm not a real man. And I saw a way to get my, I don't even like to co-opt this phrase, but it's in a negative opportunity, but I understand what I was, to regain strength or power that I felt I lost. I saw it in a criminal way. And so that fear, pain, terror of being exposed caused warped thinking and hyper-masculinity, when combined with crime, resulted in the evil, wicked thing that I did. The problem about the situation I was in is, I think he was like 4 years older than me. So when I got to high school, as a freshman, guess who's the captain of my football team?
Oh my God!
Wow. Guess who's in charge of? Yes. Guess who's in charge of my line? I was an offensive lineman. He's varsity. I'm trying to make JV. Guess who I have to answer to?
Shit. Were you terrified of him?
Huh?
Were you scared of him at that point?
It's a weird scared, right? I'll put it like this. You know how a guy can go off to the military and be trained in war and whatnot, and he comes and his mother yells at him a certain way and he just breaks down?
You have 60 seconds remaining.
That's what it was. It was something along those lines. Anyway, thanks for letting me share.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Lester. I really appreciate it.
That was when I saw it. the guy I sat across from was a total different person than whoever was in that room with me. And I sat there, it took him 2.5 hours just to look at me. He couldn't even look at me. And when he started asking me about Roxy, he finally started looking me in the eye. And we started talking about Roxy and how Roxy was doing. And the hard part for me was me going down there to visit with him, to see him. As I tell people when I talk, how I had to get ready to do that was I didn't have the radio on. I didn't do music. I sat there telling myself over and over and over again, shields down, shields down, shields down. Because who had to walk into that prison was not this tough crap chick that I've created in myself, and I have done that. Who had to walk into that prison was Roxy's mom. And I had to allow him to see the pain, because he may never get to sit across from Roxy, but he was going to see it in me. And I had to do that as a gift for him and as a gift for Roxy. Not easy. And I knew that the whole time I was walking into that prison, that I was going to, and I don't tell everybody this, but it's true. When I walked across the parking lot, and I was so typical me, I was pissed that I had to walk into that prison, and I had to walk probably 1.5 miles because, they don't give parking places to victims. So you have to go, there's a zillion people that work at these prisons. And this was at Lancaster. So I'm at Lancaster prison, tromping across the parking lot, thinking to myself, God, dang it, there's going to be a day that there's parking up front for us and it says victims, right? And I'm telling myself this, and I'm just stomping across the parking lot between the cars. And just before I got to those prison doors, I say this, I could hear the Lord say to me, never in your life have you been doing more of what I wanted you to do than what you're doing today. And I was like, oh my God. I was in step. I wasn't in his footsteps. I was in step with the Lord. And it was the most amazing feeling I have ever had in my life. And I realized what I was doing was exactly what he wanted me to do. And I walked into that prison, and everybody giving me crap going into that prison, all those guards and everybody else giving me crap because I was coming in and doing this. When I got to the prison, the guy said, what are you here for? I said, I'm doing a victim offender mediation. And the first line out of his mouth was, what the hell do you want to do that for? And I said, don't you think if they owe me instead of owing the state of California? And the guy looks at me and I said, seriously, I think they owe me. They owe me an explanation, not you. They don't owe you anything. They owe me. And I said, I've come here to ask questions, and the only person that should ask these questions is me.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
Where did we leave off?
We left off at the mediator and me starting the mediation process.
Oh, yeah.
Or being trained in the mediation process.
Yeah. And how were you feeling during that process? Like, were you nervous?
I was. At first I was nervous, and then I decided to be naked.
What do you mean when you say naked?
What I mean by that is, you walk around and you wear a cloak, you wear cloaks of respectability, you have ideologies in your head. Okay, well, this why I did that. I feel kind of justified, and I'm okay. I'm this type of person. I just came to grips with, hey, man, what still was horrible. You need to do the best by the people, all right? So you need to be honest with this situation. You don't have to make yourself look no better than you are. You just have to be honest, and you owe them the truth. And that's why I said I became naked. I didn't have anything to hide, my insecurities or vulnerabilities or none of that when I went through the training process. But and at the same time, I was going through individual therapy too. So it's like I was really heavy going into therapy. I had a personal therapist at the time, which is an oddity at CDC, and then I had the mediator, who was a very kind, accepting woman, right? And she just listened. And once she listened, and I didn't feel the starch judgment that I had on myself, she didn't give to me. And I became more and more relaxed, and I was able to talk more and more freely and open, and I was able to embrace the truth. Actually, now that I think about it, I was in triple therapy. I had a group therapy class, all right? But then I couldn't really be open in there because I didn't want to have all my personal business in that class. So then I had an individual therapy session after the group therapy session. So I put in a lot of work. I didn't just jump into the restorative process by itself, and I don't recommend anybody do that.
Right. Yeah.
Because they're not going to be ready for it.
So tell me about the morning of the day that you had the first sit down with Cheryl. When you woke up, what were you thinking? What was your mood?
I was thinking I got to go to the bathroom. And I think I said I had to go to the bathroom because I wanted my whole body to be clear, right? And I was super nervous. Everybody in my circle knew what was going on that day. And all I could just remember thinking is, I can't mess this up. So I just laid on my bunk thinking. Now, at the same time, I'm in the cell with a person who has a totally opposite ideology. His ideology was, said, basically, you don't owe them people nothing because you're doing time. That's the only thing you owe them. You don't need to go out there. Sally was a close friend of mine. He was basically saying that you're going to go out there and you're going to relive all that stuff and you're going to be emotionally drained and trauma tore up, and I'm going to have to deal with it when you get back. So, so I had to ignore him and just face my fears. I was scared that I couldn't eat.
Wow.
They have a waiting area where you strip search before you go to the visiting. But since I was the only one out there, they didn't strip search me, so I'm sitting in the strip search area, and and the mediator comes out to the area, and she talks to me, and she says, okay, remember the rules that we talked before. We're not going to interrupt each other. And if it becomes too much for you, just let me know. Just squeeze my hand, and then we'll end it. We'll take a break or end it if it's necessary. I sit there, and I just remembered wiping the sweat from my hands on my prison stencil jeans. That's how afraid I was.
Mm.
So we come in there, and she was sitting there. She was sitting there, and my therapist was there. She came as like a support system for me, right? So she was sitting there.
Did Cheryl have a support person?
No, Cheryl didn't need a support person. If you meet Cheryl, if you ever met, she doesn't need any help at all. She's a force of nature. And I mean that in a good way. So she sits there, and I sat down, and she goes, she sticks her hands out. She stick her hand out to shake my hand. So I'm taken back by it, but I don't want to be rude, so I shake her hand, right? She looks like a frail woman, but she's not. So I tried not to shake her hand too hard. I sat down, and then the mediator begins to speak, and she says, let me know if this becomes too intense for either one of you. Remember, we're not going to interrupt. We're going to let both parties say what they have to say. And she said, okay, you guys can begin. And I said, hello, Cheryl. She says, hello, Lester. And she was really intense, very determined. She says, can you tell me how it is that you end up in my house and bedroom at that moment, that night? And I started trying to answer her, but I was kind of feeble, sheepish, right? And I was thinking, man, what did I get myself into? And I said, well, you know what? Let me read you a letter called Victim Shoes. From her to me is, Dear Mr. Pope, allow me to introduce myself to you. My name is Cheryl Ward, the widow of Mr. James A. Ward, husband and father to 2 beautiful girls, a successful businessman, community leader, and love of my life. That man you murdered. Now, I know you did not pull the trigger. I hold you to the same standard as the murderer of my love because in for a penny, in for a pound. Now, I want you to understand, I'm not using this opportunity to sow hate into your life. But on June 14th, 1991, you stole more than my husband, $4,000 and the innocence of my daughter. You stole my life, you stole my dreams, my peace of mind, my quiet moments. You robbed me of my milestones, you took my lover, my confidant, and my safety. You took quiet moments, arguments over trivial matters, family gatherings. This list goes on and on. For weeks, months, and years, I had no time to grieve because I had to deal with the trial. And when I did, I wandered through the house like a ghost in the graveyard. I haunted Jamie's closet, opening the drawers and cabinets, touching his shirts, jackets, burying my face in his clothes, trying to breathe in his scent. Sometimes I would close the room door and hold the last pictures of us together and weep. The pain did not stop with me. My daughters, Trina and Roxy, lost their father. Trina had just given birth after her father's death, so he never got a chance to see his grandchild. He grew up without having the wisdom of the grandfather. Roxy, well, she received the worst of it. As you know, Jamie died in her arms. The object of her safety bled out in front of her. Can you imagine the thoughts that ran through her mind? The utter feeling of hopelessness stayed with her, so much that she turned to drugs and had a lot of trouble trying to numb the pain. Don't fool yourself into thinking that those 48 minutes are long gone. Roxy, whenever she see a black man, it would trigger once again. The anger, the hate in your voice still with me. It still does to this day. For myself, I was a youth activist in juvenile hall before this happened and was even more encouraged to do so, especially after I found out you all were teenagers. I hear that you've changed your life, and I'm glad you're now serving the Lord. Well, I pray for that. And I'm glad that you have received forgiveness from God. I too offer you forgiveness, which means I do not hold you in the context of our tragic meeting. I truly believe you're sorry for what happened. You do have my forgiveness. And simply put, I wrote this letter to let you know what you're forgiven for. And so I read Victim Truth, and then at the end, I was using the paper as a shield. So then when I looked up in her eyes, she says, she looks back, and she says, you know what, you get it. You really get it. You do understand. Right. And then after that, the meeting changed, and we just was talking after that. It wasn't anything, it wasn't prosecutorial, it wasn't adversarial, we just began to talk, and she just would ask questions, and I would answer them. You know?
People found out about me, so I ended up going back to Washington, D.C. and talking about restorative justice and all these things, and I'm like, this is really great. I have nothing in Monterey County, but now we have a commission on restorative justice, and we have juvenile offenders going through the system that way, and some adult offenders, and I mean, you know, and then you realize how much it's been done all over the world and how it's not something new, it's something that's old. And you start finding out what that really means and how important it is for people to have a voice in the process. And how long it's going to take to change, Jesus, help me. I mean, my husband's been dead 29 years this year. And how long it takes for people to realize that stupid little system that we brought from England, stupid little system big system that we brought from England sucks. And how we keep attempting to do everything with that system. And all it does is hurt victims instead of, you know, but it's so hard for people to understand that and for people to believe that, and especially victims. I mean, victims have the hardest time ever believing other than the fact that if I can convince him to sit down and have a conversation with the people in their crime, then all of a sudden it all is just like there's questions we have and that nobody else can answer but them. And then all of a sudden they start saying, you know what, I'd like to do that. I'd like to have that conversation because I have questions I want answered. And they're the only people that can answer them. I want to do it the right way, and it should be done with restorative justice. It should be done where it's victim offender. It should be done with him getting himself ready. There's just a whole thing that happens with restorative justice, and I'm not going to do it any other way.
Yeah. Would you say that the most successful one was with Lester?
Oh, by far. I mean, he's the only one. He went to prison for 29 years, and he has 0 on his record. Do you know how hard that is to do? Especially walking in as a guy that committed rape. That means all those guards, and you always have the guards that are the guys that believe that they should be the people that punish you. As I tell people that do that, if that's what you think your role is, get the hell out because we don't want you here. That's not what your role is. Your role is not to punish any of these guys. That's not your role. Help make them better? Yeah. Punish them? No. But for the last umpteen years, and the fact that he can still have 0 on his record, and when I say that because I do a lot of prison talks, and I say that in prison, he's had 0, I have guys go, that's impossible. I said, geez, you think the warden was lying to me? And they just looked at me. I said, warden wasn't lying to me, guys. He's got 0 on his record. And he's managed to be in that prison and keep that to a 0. I said, it's just amazing what he's done. And that's all I've asked any of them to do. The only way you make this right is you honor my husband's life by how you live yours. And Lester is the only one that's done that.
I really wish people could understand the shame that repentant people have. The desire to change, but even in that, Zoe, there's no outlet. I can't stand up in a group. I cannot stand up in a group and say, "Oh, when I sexually assaulted Roxy Ward with my firearm," I can't start a conversation like that. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, like you wish that you could be open about this, but you can't because it puts you in danger.
Yeah, it will put me in danger.
I knew it was going to be really hard for him. I knew this was, of all the things that he'd done in prison, nothing was going to be harder for him than to walk in and face me face to face. I knew that. And I knew that I was going to be doing something for him that he wasn't going to understand, but I would have never told him this, and I never said it to him in a letter or anything because I knew what was going to happen. I knew basically what I was doing by walking in there was I was setting him free, even in prison. But I wouldn't have said it to him because he would never have believed me. And I knew that I was doing that for him, and I had no idea that it was literally doing the same thing for me. But going in, and as I said, it took him 2.5 hours just to look at me. And he's telling me things that had gone on that day, everything that had happened working up to that, who he was working up to that, everything that happened within all of that. So it probably took him 2.5 hours to tell me all that part. And then, as I said, he started asking me about Roxy and how Roxy had done and what was happening to her and how she was doing. And I was very honest and very blunt and wasn't painting a pretty picture. I wasn't painting an ugly picture, but I was painting the truth. And then he asked me a question, and I had not prepared for the question. He asked me, okay, we've done this. What do you hope to have happen today? And I looked at him and I said, that we'd become friends. And it's as if I hit him with a baseball bat. He backed up across the room as if I literally had hit him. And he went, I can't become that. We can't become that. And I said, why? because you're in prison and I'm the offender, victim, all this crap? Is that, why can't I said, Lester, it's this simple. I can't write anyone that I'm not friends with. So if I'm writing you, I'm considering you a friend. And later he wrote me, well, first thing he wrote me when he went back to his cell. First thing he wrote me, and I knew it. First line, today you set me free. And the second thing he wrote me was, I never really believed when you told me that you didn't hate me and that you forgave me. But when you said that you hoped that we'd become friends, then I knew that you had truly forgiven me. And the funny thing for me was, when I went to the prison, I had taken an envelope with me with their CDC numbers because I'd never memorized all their numbers. That means 5 CDC numbers is a pain in the butt. So I took an envelope with me because I knew the first thing they were going to ask me was, what is this CDC number? So I thought I better have it with me. So I had it with me in an envelope. So when I went home, I went to put that envelope away because I have, as I said, I have all their letters. So I went to file it away. And when I looked at that letter, normally when I looked at that letter, I would have a flashback of him coming around the side of my bed with that shotgun in my face. That's my flash. And that flash was replaced with a picture of that young man sitting across from me. That's a totally different young man today. And that set me free. And I never knew that was going to do that for me. So that was amazing for me that I could, never having a clue. I knew I was going to set him free, but I never had a clue that it was going to do the very same for me, that it was going to set me free of having that flash. That flash is gone. Wow. Because I sat down across from him, and never in a million years did I believe that was going to be gone from me. I mean, I still live in the same house. I still sleep in the same bedroom. I win. They lose. I had to stay there. I had to embrace this crime. I could not run from it. Selling the house, doing all that was running from this crime, and I could not run from the crime. I had to find a way to embrace it. But there were flashes, and that flash was gone.
How often were you seeing that flash before you met with Lester?
I had to be careful not to do certain things that flash would come. I would try to make sure that it didn't happen for me. I would, because I still sleep in the same bedroom. I sleep on the opposite side of the bed, but I have to be careful that I can turn and look at something and that flash is there. So I have to be careful not to try, but sometimes you can't prevent that from happening. Flash is gone. It's just totally gone.
It was a few years, even after she forgave me, that I was able to forgive myself.
Do you think that process of restorative justice was necessary for you getting to the place of forgiving yourself? Oh, yeah. I do believe it is. Otherwise, it wouldn't be true forgiveness, because then it would be selfishness. Then it would be all about myself, and it wouldn't be about anybody else. I think true forgiveness, if you can, you need to make amends. But I don't think many people in here are in a place where they can face it. Because in that situation, there's no buffer. There's no lawyer. There's no trials. There's no nothing. It's just you and the truth of what you did.
He took total responsibility for the crime, total responsibility for the murder, even though he never pulled the trigger. As he said, I wanted to rape your daughter, and I escalated the crime. I had been hurt by people, and I wanted to hurt people back. And I took it all out on your daughter. And everything I had ever felt in my life got taken out on her. And in doing that, I escalated the crime, and I caused your husband No different than if I'd have pulled that trigger, I caused him to die. And never did I expect him to take that responsibility for that murder. And so to hear people laugh and make comments, big deal, he apologized. Oh no. He apologized in a way I never ever believed he would apologize. And that apology was amazing for me. And he knew it when he said it. And then at the end, when he walked out, I hugged him. And he was shocked by the fact that I hugged him. He couldn't believe that I would hug him. You can't do that unless that's what restorative justice will give you, that you can't do any other way. You can go face to face, eye to eye. They're not a monster. They're a human being. And you get to look at them in the eye, and they look you in the eye. And this crap that people say to me, oh, Cheryl, you just don't know. They're just giving you a line of bull. Bull crap. If you don't believe, I can tell the difference. So then about 2-3 years ago, I got a letter from Lester telling me, this is going to be the shortest letter I've ever written you. I'm going to petition the court for me to get out. Will you write me a letter for me to get out? And I sat there and I went, oh my God, my family's going to kill me. My family wouldn't go with me when I saw him. My family never wanted to hear what happened when I met with him. Nobody wanted to hear what he had to say. And I thought, Jesus, how am I going to do this? And then it dawned on me, you know what? This isn't mine to do. This isn't my letter to write. This is for Roxy to tell me that this is okay to write. Roxy's the one that got hurt by him the most. And I thought, how the crap am I ever going to do that? She never even wanted to hear what he had to say. So that next year, when the anniversary day comes up, we all get together. And we celebrate the day. We celebrate my husband's life. We don't go to the cemetery. We don't do that. We just do something together, and we celebrate my husband's life. And just so happened my other daughter worked in Santa Cruz, my oldest daughter, Trina. So we went to Santa Cruz that day and had lunch and whatever, and I had an opportunity to be alone with Roxy in the car coming home. And I proceeded to say, I know you've never asked me about what I did with Lester, but I'm going to tell you. So I proceeded to tell her all about what he had to tell me and everything he had to say and how he's doing in prison and all the rest of it. And I said, and he wants me to write a letter for him to get out. And I'm going to tell you that I'm going to only write that if you tell me it's okay to write. And I'm never going to mention this to you again. This is up to you to tell me yes or no, and I'm never going to say it again to you. And Roxy, 2 days later, she texted me. Of course, nobody writes you anymore. They text me, and she texted me and said, I can't even say it out loud. Write the letter for Lester to get out. I'm not his judge and jury.
We talked about traumatic life, asked me about the abuses of my life. She told me about hers. She told me about the family. And we ate trail mix, which I think was the most surreal thing of it all. I'm sitting in the room with the widow and the mother of her daughter that I harmed, and we're talking about God's forgiveness, eating trail mix, sharing from the same bowl.
Wait, I can't remember if we already did this. Did we already do the thing where, because in every episode I'm going to ask each person that I interview how they would reimagine justice. Did we already do this?
No, you never asked me that.
Off the cuff, how would you reimagine justice?
I would stick with the meaning of the word. And one thing I would do is I would replace the state as the victim with the survivors of the crime. I would ask the question, how can I make this whole? How can I make this person whole? I think I would be more compassionate. And compassionate is not always letting someone off. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you could do to a person, they may have to go and get some help. You have a department of mental health that they could use. If I don't have any remorse, and I go to prison, continue my criminal activity, how does that help the widow? Or if I go to prison, but I do have remorse, I do have empathy, I do understand what I'm doing, right? And I'm still here after 45 years, how does that help the survivor? I think I would be more open-minded to what people really need.
Thank you for listening to Imagine Justice. I'd love to know what you thought of the episode. Please leave a rating and a review. I am Zio Bookbinder, the creator of this podcast. This episode was edited by Ani DeFranco. Music is by Todd Sikafus and Ani DeFranco. This episode was made possible with funding from Canada Council for the Arts. If you or someone you know has lived a story that you think would be good for this podcast, please visit zeobookbinder.com/podcast to make a submission. That's zeobookbinder.com/podcast.
Oh, my friend, it's such a shame. When he was young, he was hurt by someone, and he'll pay with the rest of his days. 9 years later, in a secret kept, the pain like a poison through him crept. He wore armor made of fear. He couldn't show weakness, couldn't shed a tear. One day he could not carry the weight. Thought he could pass on his pain as hate. He thought he could give it to someone, pass it on through the barrel of a gun. Oh, my friend, it's such a shame. When he was young, he hurt someone, and he'll pay with the rest of his days. 9 years later, laying on his bunk, 9 years sitting with the truth of what he'd done. He wasn't waiting, but a letter came. On the envelope he read her name. He read it over and over in his cell. Her words quenched him like water from a well. She said, God forgives you, and so do I. I think it's time we reconcile. Oh, my friend, it's such a shame. When he was young, he hurt someone, and he'll pay with the rest of his days. Oh, the rest of his days. Oh, the rest of his days. Oh, the rest of his days. He'll pay with the rest of his days. She took off her anger, he took off his shame. They met unguarded, face to face. He saw her sorrow, she saw his pain. They put love where there once was hate, but he'd still be punished by the state. Oh, my friend, it's such a shame. When he was young, he hurt someone, and he'll pay with the rest of his days. Oh, the rest of his days. Oh, the rest of his days. Oh, He'll pay with the rest of his days.